So the talk itself, this is quite important statement to me as a Syrian, first and foremost, dedicated to those without a voice, the displaced who lost their homes and cities, the torn who lost their lands, beloved ones, and the forgotten children. And this unjust chaos who will rise from the ashes to rebuild it all again. So this is to me important. Okay, so what is important? Wow, guys, when I start doing this study, the refugees worldwide were around 65 million people. 65 million. Imagine now, 65 million, that's in 2017. 65 million, that's the population of France, by the way, just to put it in perspective. 2024 now, we are more than 110 million. So wow, within 6-7 years, those who are forcibly displaced. Yeah, so that's the total forcibly displaced, not necessarily all asylum per se, because we need to be careful we're not mixing the concepts together. Forcibly displaced, not necessarily you are asylum yet. Okay, more than 110 million. 6-7 years ago, that was only 60 million. So wow, and that's to do with conflict, to do with economic condition, to do with climate change now. And I don't think the number will go down any sooner, actually. So this is to me quite shocking statistics. You might say, why shocking? For an obvious reasons. United Nations is the weakest point in this case. The council who is responsible for the refugees, UNHCR, doesn't have resources. It's not an entity. It's not a commercial company or an enterprise company. UNHCR, organization funded by the donors. You give me £1, I spend £1. You give me nothing, I spend nothing. So it's quite crucial really to put that in perspective. Another things I want to say, United Nations when work with any country, legally and by the law, it work under the umbrella of the host nation. So United Nations has no say whatsoever in the camp design. She cannot force any rules or regulations on the host nation. Hence, United Nations, in this case, is the weakest point. That's, by the way, the international agreement between the countries. This slide in 2017, wow, just to show you how the subject is moving so rapidly. So imagine this is back in 2017, where we used to be 65 million. But I really like this one. But that's wow, 2017. I'm sure this number is wrong now. Every minute, worldwide now, every minute, 24 people are displaced. Given the current numbers now, that's to me maybe now 15 or 14. And this is another interesting one. 1 in every 113 people on the earth is an asylum seeker or internally displaced or a refugee. And again, I have a feeling this is now maybe 60 or 70. Why camps? Camps to me, I call them a space of paradox. Camps is a space of paradox. Why paradox? Because it places the refugees in a space that's neither belong nor is wanted by their host nation. Hence, they call it a space of paradox. Because you don't belong to this space, but equally you are not welcomed, usually, by the host nation. That's quite really very important concept. I want to start with Jane Jacobs when they said, I'm sure you may know Jane Jacobs, those who studied architecture and urban planning. She said cities have the capability of providing something for everybody only because and only when they are created by everybody. We'll show you later on the camps is not an exemption from this strong statement. Hence, I call it camps have the capability of providing something for everybody. Only because and only when they are created by everybody. We'll show that. I shouldn't put those photos, but those photos does upset me because legally I am allowed to put them because they are available, but equally, sometimes I'm worried about the safety of those children. Look at the hope the children they have. This lady here, she's got Sham. Sham means Syria. And this is to me mean a lot. When a little girl like this one has got a hat with the name of the country written on the hat itself. And the same, by the way, with the rest of the children. I really like this as well statement. Every human being is innately a placemaker. When you put people in difficult positions, they know how to create their spaces. And I will show you later on how the refugees themselves become really placemakers. I want you to bear in mind within my talk that refugees are a human being. That's really quite important statement to me. Because war or conflict or crisis does not erase humanity or culture or pride or hope or even sense of belonging. In Syria, so far there are around 3.4 now million refugees in Turkey. So Turkey is the main, we have the largest Syrian population in Turkey at the moment. Not ideal, I have to admit, but still much better than other countries, but not ideal. They are not really, how do you want me to say? They face a lot of challenges and issues, especially, let us put it this way, always, whenever you have economic crisis, it's so easy to put the finger on migrants and refugees. Whenever you have economic crisis in Western countries or in Arab countries or in Turkey, immediately it's so easy to put the finger into migrants or refugees, and it's become a political card. That's exactly what happened in Turkey, actually. And now it's become a little bit issue even in country like Germany as well, because of the economic condition. In Lebanon, that's an interesting country. I feel sorry for people in Lebanon. What I am going to show you in Al-Za'atari is paradise. Paradise, it is a heaven, compared with the condition in Lebanon. I cannot describe how bad it is in Lebanon. And I will say something why it is so bad. The biggest mistake in Lebanon, United Nations managed only to register around 900,000 Syrian. And there is at least 1 million extra Syrian without registration. And that's come with its own challenges. Lebanon as a government refused right from the beginning to establish camps. Why? They have a trauma from the Palestinian refugees camp. Because over time, all the refugees camp who came from as a result of the war with Israel, they became cities, informal cities. Lebanese government said, sorry, no camp policy. Let us distribute all Syrian across the whole country. But that's put the United Nations under massive challenges in terms of how can we reach those refugees? How can we provide them with basic needs, facilities, and services? So 900,000 are registered, and at least 1.5 million are not registered. So at least, by the way, there are 2 million Syrian as refugees in Lebanon. In Jordan, 625. Just to show you, if you allow me to say, always refugees, we here in the room, we think it is a very human card. It is a very dirty card and very political card and very economic card. So in Jordan, for example, they are 625,000 Syrian there. The government there called them refugees. In reality, the refugees only 20%. Those who are in camps are only 20% of that number. In total, they are 131,000. You might tell me, where is the rest then? The rest are working in Jordan, or they have settlement in Jordan, in houses, where, like me, for example, I may have a family in Jordan and I pay for the rent and so on. But Jordanian government call them all refugees. You might say, why? To get basically money, donation from the donors. Okay, so you as a Westerns here in the UK, you might feel they are only all refugees, but in reality, they are not. Okay, in Iraq, around 250,000. In Egypt now, they become nearly 500,000. And interestingly, all they call them refugees, not necessarily they are all. If you want to know exactly the numbers, that's what is registered as refugees. This is from the website of United Nations. Turkey has got up to 5th of October, that's 3,275,000. Lebanon, 8,800. Jordan, as I said, 650,000. Iraq, 271. And Egypt, 152. But this is quite upsetting to me as someone who worked with vision and visioning as a planner myself. This is quite upsetting. Almost 5 million children born into war in Syria. This is up to 2020. Wow. So what happened since that time? 5 million. That's, by the way, the population of Scotland, just to put it in perspective. Now, you might tell me, so what? Most of those 5 million with no nationality, so they don't have nationality. Because even if you're born in Jordan, you don't have the nationality. If you're born in Lebanon or Turkey, you don't have the nationality. Plus, the Syrian government not necessarily will accept you to be registered in their government. So all what you have a kind of stateless document by United Nations. So just to show you how shocking this. So there is, to me, the sense of belonging. Like, are they Syrian, those people? Do they belong to Syria? So that's, to me, an interesting challenge. We lost what I call it sense of belonging. And this is worrying for me, for future generation, like future Syria. Let alone who is going to build Syria. If you lost the youth, who is going to build the country then? And there is a change in demography in Syria now. 70% of the population now in Syria is women. That's quite worrying to me, because it will have a huge challenge in future country, the next 10 or 15 years. Of course, funding, another interesting issues. This is recent statistics showing exactly what is the total required for refugees in Turkey, Lebanon, Jordan, Iraq. That's what is the total required. And this is what is received only. And this is the gap in funding. Wow, guys. So all those refugees, they only receive. When was that? That's up to September, end of September 2023. They only receive 22% by the donors. Because you cannot force it. So for example, if UK government promised to give 100 quid, yeah, legally, they are not obliged. If UK government only give 22% of those 100 quid, that's it. That's what we have. You cannot force it. Legally, you're not obliged to pay it. Camp. This is quite important one. And that's one of the reasons why Jordanian government and Lebanese, they have a trauma when it's come to camp design and how to design camp. But I think Jordanian government was a bit smarter in the way they tackle these issues. We'll show you how. This is, by the way, all the camps created on the back of all Israeli and Arab war conflict since 1948 until 1973. All those, you could see them. They become over time informal cities or informal towns. That's one of the examples came after the war in 1967. That's called Al-Baqa Refugees Camp. Look at it, simple tent or caravans, and this is what it is right now. Hence, Lebanon and Jordan, they have that sense of trauma. Oops, we cannot let those refugees settled forever. Because the problem with the emergency response to war, one thing you're not sure about, when is it over? Is it 2 months? Is it 3 months? Or is it 10 years? Or is it 75 years, like the one between Israel and the Arab? Okay? So Lebanon said no camp policy. That's what they have, no camp policy. And I will show you on maps how they did it in Lebanon. The Jordanian did it in a different way. That's Lebanon, by the way. Syria here, by the way. That's Lebanon. This is how many Syrian refugees came to Lebanon. Wow, in 2012, June 2013, and this is in 2014. Wow, all those spots you see is registered refugees. The largest one between 15,000 up to 33,000. They did not create any camp per se. And that to me was the biggest mistake. The biggest mistake, because they put the Syrian refugees in the front of the Lebanese people. And that's create huge tension between Lebanese and Syria. To the extent, United Nations now, most of the donation come to Syria has to be split between Lebanese and Syrian, especially when it's come to sharing schools, sharing facilities and services. Plus, the file itself is full of corruption, sorry to say it. Because I repeat myself, you don't have a sophisticated auditing system. Yeah? You cannot control how and who will spend those money. So that to me was one of the largest mistakes. And I am a big advocate now. You should have a camp, even in Lebanon, protected by United Nations. Don't let the Syrian exposed to Lebanese. And that to me is a huge issue. And actually, it is a huge mistake. Sorry, I know this is politics, but it is what it is. That's the Lebanon. And of course, I have to admit, 1 out of 4 in Lebanon now is Syria. Lebanon is a small country. 1 out of 4 is Syria. That's Lebanon. And this is where they live. Just to show you, it's awful condition, really awful. It is hostile environment. And by the way, those host nations, they intend to make the environment hostiles. Because a lot of research said, once you improve the condition, you will give no mechanism for those people to go back to their country. Hence, they insist to leave the hostile environment, especially when it's come to hygiene, clean water, clean food, and even, wow, sanitation and drainage. Imagine, that's the drainage system. Imagine if the temperature is 40 right now. It is 40 today in Lebanon. What kind of diseases will be in here? So just to show you, this is the condition in Lebanon so far. And see, I really found this quite interesting, the sofa. Where did the sofa come from? But anyway, that's a different matter. We'll talk about this later on. So that's the condition in Lebanon. Look at the drainage as well, and look at the children. And this is exactly their day-to-day life. Okay, and this is actually how they warm themselves during the winter. Let us go, but I repeat myself. So what you're going to see in Al-Za'atari is an heaven and paradise comparing with the hostile issues in Lebanon. Camp, camp, when it's come to camp, three things important. Money is very scarce. Sometimes you deal with massive influx a day. Al-Za'atari received 10,000 people in one day. Hence, when it's come to emergency response, you have to have kind of military approach to it. Camp design does follow a military approach. Very rigid grid. We'll show it to you. That's the grid in front of you. Why? For fire prevention, the ease of access to food and drinks, and also easy to set up. This is how the emergency response should respond to any conflict. Bear in mind, scarce and money is really very, very limited in this case. And sometimes you're dealing with massive influx. So safety and security at the heart of it. Hence, I know a lot of researchers in the room, oh, you should consider a human approach to camp design. Yes, but sorry, the reality, when you deal with emergency, and when you deal with the fact you have to host too many people, I'm not sure whether the human responds to it. Okay? So that's really quite crucial when it's come to consideration of responding to emergency. It does follow a very complex legislation. Think about fixed state and numbers, and it's always about command and control. Bear in mind, why? Those refugees normally come with a very angry face. And actually, in the camp itself, they did attack some of the Jordanian police. And as far as I know, one policeman lost his life. Okay, so that's another thing to bear in mind. Why the military approach? And we'll say something about the military approach later on. This is the caravans, and I will say why the caravans. I found that's quite interesting. When they set up the camp, they start with tents. Women used to cook in the tents, and a lot of those tents picked up fires, and a lot of women actually lost their lives. In the camp, Jordanian government was very strict. You cannot establish any foundation for any structure. They have that fear. If you start establishing any permanent structure, that will lead to informal settlement over time. The caravan, at the moment they have in the camps around 27 caravans. Each caravan is 3 by 5. 3 by 5. That's the dimension. I am afraid 15 meters square, up to 5 people. From 1 up to 5 people could live in the caravan. The actual value of the caravan at that time, around $3,000, $3,500. Very low quality, and the longevity of the caravan is only 10 years. And here we go. Those caravans now are 12 years old. And some of them, actually, they start having issues, a lot of cracks and so on. And I will show you what the Syrian did for it. Okay? So that's the story of the caravans and where it comes. Jordanian government, up to now, you cannot dig the ground. You cannot bring any blocks or anything might lead to permanent structure. Okay? Because they need to keep what I call it temporality. And that's what led to what I call it the indefinite temporality. The indefinite temporality. Because you're not sure when you will be back in Syria. That's what they call it, indefinite temporality. One more thing I want to say. For each £100 you donate to Lebanon, when I say donate, like UK government or Europe or United States, 30 to 35% of that amount go automatically to the governments there. And they call it a replacement for infrastructure. So that's a compensation for infrastructure. and the 65% remaining go to the refugees. Okay. So this is why refugees matter becoming a financial commodity to the host nations. Why I got excited? Wow. Why I got excited about the subject, actually, these pictures. This is the caravans when they arrived to the camp. And wow, within a year, guys, I thought, oh my goodness, what is that? What's happened to this? Why we move from the very formal to the very informal? And why there is merging between tent and caravans? And why such language? What's happened to why we move from the formality and the very rigid plan? And why the informality? And why it becomes sophisticated hybrid? And what happened to that? That's becoming the souk. So I was really so interested to know exactly why that's happened. I would urge you to look at Google and to go back to the Google image of December 2012 to Al-Za'atari. You could see this is the caravans, and that's exactly the rigid plan I was highlighting. That's exactly how United Nations organized camps. Rows, and in between, you will see the distribution centers for food, drinks, kitchen, and bathrooms. One of the biggest challenge for Syrians when they arrive, this idea of sharing bathrooms and sharing kitchen. That's very sensitive matter for those who come from the Syrian culture. You cannot just simply share a bathrooms or share kitchens with the strangers. Let us put it this way. That was a huge challenge. And I will show you how the refugees overcome that. But what surprised me, guys, that's December 2012. Wow, so that's the end of the year. And, and this is March 2013. Wow. Suddenly, that rigid structure become fuzzy a little bit and loose and diffused. And this is January 2014. It become a bit more informal. Yes? That's one of the reasons why I got excited. The rapid transformation. Why such rapid transformation? This is zooming into the camp itself using the Google. And this is what the camp right now. 81,000 inhabitants, 81,000 so far. That's registered by United Nations. As you can see, you don't really see now anymore. You may trace some of the main routes, but see, look at the cluster, how sophisticated it becomes. So this is why one of the reasons why I got very interested in the subject itself. That's another one. That's, by the way, is the living room of the camp, the high street, and it's called Champs-Élysées. And we'll say something about it, why the Syrian call it Champs-Élysées. Okay, where is Al-Za'atari? That's Al-Za'atari camp. That's the Syrian border. It's around 6 or 7 kilometers to the north of the border itself. Al-Za'atari came from an existing Jordanian village called Al-Za'atari. So the nickname came from an existing Jordanian village. It is like a prison. So it is the camp itself. It's like a prison. Fences, no engagement with Jordanian citizen. So this is quite important as well. So it has its own boundaries as well. One thing's quite important. One day, 2013 or 2014, around 120,000 people settled in the camp. And around 475,000 people came across the camp over the last 13 or 14 years. So far, they are 81,000. But one day, it reached the maximum of 120,000 people. And around 475,000 reach it. I have to admit, some people said to me, maybe the number a bit lower, but that's number being fixed because there is a certain portion of money comes to the Jordanian government for this number. This is to me quite upsetting. 75% are under 24. 20% of those in the camp are under 5 years old. Wow, that's massive. 20%. And this is quite shocking a little bit, although it's a bit changing. Average of 80 bears per week. Per week, that's massive. So the camp produce 80 babies a week. There is a reason for it. Young sisters, how do you want to say, there was kind of marriage at 14 and 15 years old. Things has improved over time with education, but 14, 15 years old, yes, earlier, got married. For one reason, culturally, the mom was, because the camp was very compact, very dense, moms were afraid about how do you want to see the privacy of their girls. So that's to do with the culture. So one of the solutions they found, oh, how about if she get married earlier? Okay, but things has improved, but that's quite shocking because if you calculate that, the birth rate is very, very high. Very, very high, actually. The same problem with Lebanon. Lebanon has got 2 million. Last year in Lebanon, there was 50,000 Syrian babies within a year. 50,000 Syrian babies born in Lebanon just last year. And by the way, the camp cover only 5.3 kilometers square. That's very small. That's the size of the camp. 3 multiplied with 2. It's actually even less than 6 kilometers square. Those who knows Dundee waterfront, where I came from, that's the size of Dundee waterfront. We'll show it to you on the map. That's the second refugees camp in Jordan called Azraq camp for 40,000. Jordanian government didn't allow the refugees to transform anything there. And this camp is a bit more sensitive politically because they have soldiers who deflected from Assad regime or Syrian army, and they have journalists as well. Hence, the control here is a bit tighter, but it has 40,000 Syrian inhabitants. And this is Al-Za'atari. Al-Za'atari, interestingly, what helped in the transformation process of Al-Za'atari? The fact around 80% of the inhabitants came from one city or from one region called Dar'a or Hawran. We'll show it to you on the map. Here, this is the south of Syria. This area as a region called Hawran, and it has a big city called Dar'a. So 80% of those who come to Al-Za'atari come from this area. You might tell me, so what? Those came from the same culture background. They are the majority Bedouin or farmers. So they know each other a lot back in Syria. And actually, they have more or less similar culture. And that's really, and they know each other. It's split more or less 50-50 between women and men. And as I said, there are now around 27,000 caravans in the camp. But this is quite important. There are around 11 schools, 27 community centers. A lot of them, they provide psychological support and the recreational activities. They have 2 hospitals with 55 beds, 9 healthcare centers, 1 delivery unit, and 120 community health volunteers. Why those statistics are important? To show you this is becoming a city over the time. 80,000 inhabitants, by the way, guys, that's the number of the inhabitants live in Bath in the UK. Okay, that's what is the camp looks like. And this is a 2-kilometer high street. This is the high street of the camp with the 3,600 shops. 3,600 shops by the Syrian itself. That's become the community room, the living room of the community. This is the French hospital and the school beside it. The Syrian refugees called this high street Champs-Élysées. Élysées because it has the French hospital and Sham is Syria. Okay, that's becoming really the economic engine now of the camp. A lot of enterprising. Interestingly now, just to show you money, Jordanian people got interested in making business in the camp. They start buying those caravans. The caravans has zero value because it is donation. Over time, picked up value. Some of those caravans, depends on the location, could cost now £7,000. £7,000. You might tell me why the Jordanian bought those caravans to rent them out to refugees. And the rent could be £1,000 a month. Okay? I will say there is a lot of economic activities on those. That's become a proper high street. Even recently, a Syrian refugees become competent financially. He bought 2 or 3 caravans and he opened a swimming pool there. Okay, so this is the Al-Za'atari, and this is, you see the Al-Za'atari at the back, and this is the Jordanian village called Al-Za'atari village. No connection, and as you can see, it is like a prison. And it is in desert, by the way. It is in desert. It is in nowhere to keep the hostile environment. Legally, there is a contract between United Nations and Jordanian government. So every month, the United Nations has to pay the rent for the land which is in nowhere. 95% of the caravans now linked to electricity, and every month the Jordanian government send the bill, and United Nations must pay it. That's exactly the Syrian border, and this is the shape of the master plan, 3x2. This is what it is right now. I got very ingrid. Where those in Arabic, for those who knows the rural area, they call them luh tuti, which is metallic corrugated sheets, if you know what I mean. You might tell me where they come from. Over time, Syrian refugees develop a good relationship with the tracks who serve the camp on daily basis. And they manage to smuggle with a bribe illegally those sheets. Why? In order either to acquire more spaces or to insulate the caravans against the harsh weathers in winter and over summer. Because they know quite well the Jordanian government will not allow you to smuggle anything that may lead to permanent structure. See how they created extra spaces by using those corrugated metallic sheets. It's all to do with either environmental consideration and create insulation on the roof, or to create extra spaces, or for privacy reason. Now, another thing I got excited. This is Dar'a city back in Syria. And I really got excited about the morphology. And I was trying to make a study to see whether there is any similarity with the language the refugees establish over time. This is, by the way, the camp. That's the shape of the master plan. That's, by the way, here, how it started. No brainer, because the main gate was in here. And imagine this is in August 2012, and this is, wow, was nearly full by January 2014. That's, by the way, very short time. That's very short time. That's exactly the master plan. You want me to go back? Go ahead. That's the master plan. That's the main gate. And that's the T shape. And that's the grid structure I said earlier. It's all to do, as I said, rows of caravans, and in the middle, main accessibility routes for food, distribution centers, water, kitchens, and so on. Safety and concerns and control must be #1 priority for United Nations. That's the priority #1 when it's come to doing a master plan for a camp. Security, control, and also preventions of fire. Of course, you will see there will be no drainage system. European countries try to convince the Jordanian government, but again, we'll show you, unfortunately, how the drainage system works. I have to admit, what has helped in the transformation of Al Camp, they were very lucky. They have a European leader. He was called one day the mayor of Al-Za'atari. He was very passionate about the social agenda of the camp. He was pushing for the refugees to take over the responsibility of how to run and how to manage the camp. And he is no longer now the mayor, but he was the one behind the transformation process. What he did nicely, he split the camp into 12 zones. They have a very interesting, sophisticated design code. Like, that's one zone. How many people should live in that zone? How many in the street level? And how many even in the caravan level? That has helped a lot in the management of Al Camp itself, in terms of knowing exactly what is needed in terms of facility, services, water, and so forth. So that's one way has helped a lot in managing of it. Not only that, over time, because there is a trust now between the refugees and the leaders of the camp, refugees have now representative in each zone, and in Arabic called Mukhtar. Mukhtar, like a leader. He speaks on behalf of the refugees, of the behalf of the community, in relation to their needs and what they require on daily basis. That's the camp itself, the 3x2. And this is an interesting section. So that's Al-Za'atari village. The camp has nothing. And this is a section showing the camp itself. As you can see, it's all horizontal. There is no vertical architecture. There is no minarets for any mosque. There are a couple of mosques here and there. Just you're not allowed. Hence, you see, it's all horizontal, unlike the other Palestinian camps. That's the density level in the camp now. And interestingly, look at the concentration on that T shape, because you might tell me why it is concentrated here. No brainer, because the main gate was located, and up to now, in this area itself. Interestingly, United Nations try to remind always Syrian refugees that they have to go back to their homeland, Syria. They did consultation with them 3 or 4 years ago, and they asked them to vote naming street names, key street names, using streets back in Syria. And this is a map by United Nations. And if you look at the names, it's all very well-known streets back in their towns and cities. This is all Arabic names, by the way. This is the camps as it is, and that's the T-shape I said, and that's the Champs-Élysées. United Nations use this handbook when it's come to setting up a camp. And they call it Handbook for Emergency. The Handbook for Emergency. It really follow very top-down approach. It doesn't have very humanitarian approach to it because I repeat myself, it's all to do with how to accommodate massive influx of people on daily basis. In a way or another, I'm not sure whether you know the Maslow hierarchy of needs. That's the Maslow, the very famous Maslow hierarchy of needs of any one of us. United Nations more or less focus on those two as a starter when it's come to emergency, a humanitarian response, which is the psychological needs, providing safety, rest, warmth, food, and to some extent, yes, the safety and security. The problem with this handbook, it see the refugees as if it is all homogeneous mass, all the same. Actually, even Syrians themselves in the same country, we are different between cities and rural, between cities and Bedouin, and so on. So unfortunately, the handbook itself does not take into account the different levels of knowledge, competencies, different needs, and even expectations. And that's exactly how the handbook operates. One family, one tent or one caravan, from 1 to 5, with one latrine in terms of water. Community, around 80 caravans. They call those community, 80 caravans or 80 tents with 2 refuse drums. So as you can see, very rigid code. This one, they call it block, 1,250 caravans. They call them block. Sector, 5,000. But once you have 5,000, we will build for you one school and one distribution point. 20,000, then we will establish one health, one feeding centers, and one market. That's exactly, it's really one size fit approach to everybody. That's exactly the numbers it follows, just for those who might be interested. So it's all about numbers rather than thinking about people themselves. This is how they address the issue. And this really good sketch show exactly the reality, how it works. Caravans or tents, and then in the middle, in between, kitchens, distributions, centers and facilities, food, and so forth. And every now and then, you have the hospitals, you have the schools, and so forth. That's exactly how the camps being normally works. That's exactly how we put it in a different manner, in different ways. As you can see as well, it was so sensitive for Syria to share the bathrooms and to share the kitchens. So what I am trying to say, yes, we could criticize the top-down approach, we can. But I repeat myself, with emergency, you have to have the top-down approach. Sometimes you have to take the decision within really 12, 14 hours. Wow, to accommodate 10,000 people. For security reason, you have to check their identity, you have to register them, you have to know who are they. Okay. So yes, it does follow kind of complex, rigid. It's all about end state and fixing, and it's all about command and control. That's exactly how the top-down approach operates. That's unfortunately the caravan, the 3x5. And actually, the material itself, it is a steel and foam sandwich panels. So it has steel bars with floor panels. And it's really not necessarily good quality. Most of the time, the roof drip water as well. That's some of the just layout of the caravan. And this is how they transport the caravan to the camp itself. I like this statement by Professor David. He said, give refugees better condition, and there will be less international pressure to get them back home. Hence, sorry to say it, if you look at the current war in Gaza, Egypt and Jordan was, furious, no, we cannot let any of them to come to to cross the boundaries because they know quite well if they cross the boundaries, they will never go back to Gaza. So if you think about the top-down approach, it does come with its institutional boundaries and constraint. It does come with the spatial boundaries on refugees in terms of spaces, in terms of privacy, security, but also it doesn't really protect or bring on board the cultural boundaries. I will show you now how we move from command control to the evolution and co-creation by the refugees themselves. Those to me quite important, and I want you to bear them in mind now. As soon as the camps last beyond the emergency phase, wow, once you feel, oops, this is no longer 1 month or 2 months or 3 months or 6 months. Refugees will start transforming the camp into spaces which people begin to identify and customize according to their needs. And that's what I call it, the permanent paradox. A life of refugees in camp between an indefinite and indefinite temporality and the space that is transformed because its occupants necessarily appropriated in order to live in it. And I will show you some good examples. How, when the refugees, the Syrian refugees, start moving beyond the basic needs after 3 or 6 months, how they start really thinking about more about the psychological needs, like belonging and love, relationship, establishing relationship and friends, or prestige or feeling accomplishment. We'll show you some evidence of that. So this is, to me, the camp start transforming from being about hard in structure into more soft structures, the soft elements run by the refugees. I'm going to show those 3 things. They are in my papers and in this document. The act of placemaking as a collective decision-making and as a construction of self-identity, and over time as a competition of resources. We'll show you some evidence for it. Firstly, the interesting things over time, the spatial negotiation between the refugees themselves and the spaces through collaboration and the act of collectivism, where camp inhabitants see to help each other as a partners in adversity. So it is once you start feeling safe and secure, and this is my own space, over time you feel, oops, we are partner in this adversity. Let us then negotiate the space and see how we could make most of it. And this is, to me, a true example. If you see how those people start constructing extra spaces, acquiring extra spaces because they know 15 meters square is not big enough to accommodate 3 or 4 or 5 people. So and they start creating hybrid environment through really daily negotiation. Interestingly, by the way, the camp keep evolving on daily basis according to the needs and according to the social dynamics. And I really found that so smart and so interesting. When they introduced the caravan, the refugees start merging and welding and bringing the caravan with the tent. You might tell me why. That's over time become the kitchen. And that's become the living room. Or half of the little tent is small bathrooms, and half of it a small kitchen. And that's become the living and what they call it, the bedrooms as well over time. So that's hybrid structure start really emerging, acquiring more spaces. And what I noticed, the refugees start establishing 3 kind of places. The first one, I call it the first place, which is basically the caravan and the hybrid tents and caravan. The second one, I call it the second places, which was the hospitals, clinics, schools, and distribution one. And more importantly, what I call it, the third places. The third places was the sidewalk cafes, the bakeries, the groceries, the high streets, the barber shops. I will show you those three kind of places emerged over time. I know this is awful, but I have to explain it. Apologies. Because I don't want to feel as if, wow, the camp is a camp at the end of the day. The refugees, most of them, especially women, refused to use shared bathrooms. What instead they did, they created their own drainage system by digging a big hole inside the caravans or the tent. That's become their own bathrooms because there is no drainage system, no sanitation system. No sanitation system at all. Only small part close to the hospitals and so on. That I found it quite interesting, the spatial coordination. For God's sake, guys, an interesting caravan, satellite, a tent in here. That's an old tent. Here there is in the middle kind of small balcony to give sheltering, and that's a corrugated roofs. And look what it is on the top to give extra insulation. Just see how sophisticated is the house itself become in terms of typologies. That's an interesting one as well. Blocks with the little cylinders here. It seems to me here that's maybe the bathrooms and the water coming through the cylinder itself. I was so interested on the rapid transformation. What make it rapid is the use of this simple technique by the refugees itself. The caravan conveyor that's created by the Syrians themselves. So they start moving the caravans on daily basis. On daily basis using those conveyor. Really designed by the refugees themselves. That's, by the way, one of the reasons behind the rapid transformation. Of course, the leaders of the camps know that, and they allow that. That's exactly how they really managed to transform it using the conveyors and using these skills of negotiation and collective intelligence between the refugees. And this is what it is right now. Look at this, guys. That's one caravan. That's another one. That's a third one. That's for family. They know each other. So this is a family and extended family. And they have a shared balcony in between. So the void in between become a shared common space for those maybe brothers and sisters. That's another interesting one. What happened over time? Tent and caravan. The tent merged with the caravan. And those who know each other from before, they start moving the caravan to become close to each other. And then they may have a shared courtyard. And then they establish their own sanitation system and the water cylinder. So it becomes self-organized system. That's an interesting one. Look at the languages. And that's the main high street, the Champs-Élysées. So how they modify the camp infrastructure over time. And this is just a photo montage of what the caravans together may look like. And unfortunately, as you can see, you see the black and the gray water floating around here and there because there is no infrastructure, no sanitation system or drainage system at all. These diagrams actually show how on daily basis the caravan, I really like this one. I know you, Robert, you said I shouldn't move, but never mind. So look at the caravan itself, how they start establishing their own little balcony. And this is for an extended family. A courtyard, another courtyard. This is one of the housing typologies emerge over the time. These clustering ideas for those they know each other back in their cities. And this is, we managed to map, this is the typologies emerged over time of the caravans. tent, caravan and tent, caravan and two tents, caravan and a shared balcony or a space, or three with tent, or this is with a big external court for a big families or big extended families. And this is some of the clustering languages, moving from this very rigid system into this kind of clustering languages. It's all about creating local communities so they know each other. An Italian artist came to Al Camp, and she managed to map all the courtyard with the fountains, and she managed to map, there are at least 65 fountains in the camp itself, and I found that's quite interesting. Look at the detail of these fountains. That's the name of the artist, by the way. And because she got excited about it, she managed to bring a statue of one of those fountain, and that statue now in Bologna city center, with the name of the refugees and the name of the caravan as well, unit. But just look at the detail of the fountains and actually the greening. So that's one of the courtyard there. What this message showing me, the way the refugees use the place and placemaking as a construction of self-identity. That's quite important. Creating your self-identity as a psychotherapy, an attempt to listen. This is all to do with listen anxiety by really producing what is familiar to you, what is familiar to your culture. So that's one of the reasons why those people are so interested in those fountains. I thought I should show some of those basic nice diagrams just to show you over time, when you realize the temperature now on the camp now today around 40, 45 degrees. I want to show you this. Wow, how the refugees, because they came the majority from rural background, and they are familiar with the corrugated and this canopy with tires, they created an agriculture fabric, adding extra of insulation. Look at this lively diagrams. So this is the caravan. They added extra layer of insulation with the void in between in order to cool down the roofing temperature. That's what they call it. A prototype canopy with tires and agriculture fabric. Immediately, the United Nations got excited about the idea and start supporting these ideas. And start educating as well those farmers. And they start implementing this more or less everywhere. Look at the fabrics, how simple, the framework and the tires. And in diagrams, I will show it to you. The whole idea is to create extra layer of insulations. Extra layer of insulation. That's the reason behind it. So wow, this is one environmental consideration. The transformation was for environmental consideration. And look at it as well, how the canopy itself extended between two caravans to create extra shaded places, common spaces between those who know each other. But I like it as well, the insulation was underneath as well. So the United Nations tried to raise a bit the caravan in order to create extra layer of insulation underneath as well. So to let the air coming as well at the bottom. Let us put it this way, filtering throughout the caravans. This is just how the canopy itself with the tires work as well, with the fabric and the framework. By the way, those who are looking for sources, this is a quite an important source. I would encourage you to look at it. That's another interesting one. The tent and the caravan and the merging together. So you start moving from environmental consideration into acquiring more spaces. That's another third one. those who become financially competent and richer, they start buying those caravans and bringing two together with the void in the middle. This is really some of the languages start emerging with a little courtyard in here. See how complex become the language over time with the courtyard in the middle, with a series of caravans, and start linking with electricity. All illegally now linked with electricity cable. Around 90-95% has got electricity. And this is some of the housing typologies mapped in the camp itself. And this is what it looks like. I've seen myself these pictures in some of the rural kitchen in some of the areas back in Syria. So reproducing the familiar is quite important to lessen anxiety by reproducing the familiar. Look at this spaces itself here in between and the cover on the top in the middle itself. Not ideal, but again, to create what they call it a home. And that's little balcony here as well, in front of the house. That's again, unfortunately, that's the hole and the drainage system, how it works. Unfortunately, farming was a tough. They tried a lot, the Syrian, to do some farming, but because it is desert, the soil wasn't good enough for farming whatsoever, although some of them they tried. And this is just to show you the shared spaces quality and how the gray and black water is floating. So the message in here, we move from a very top down, and this is the lovely bottom up. What I like about bottom up, let me show you. Do I have the diagram? No, not yet. Just 1 second. So look at this complex social structure and cluster. So it started with a very basic environmental response into more hybrid evolution, reaching to this language, which I call it complex social structure. If you look at it, the bottom up through collective thinking and collective constructions of idea and thoughts, it leads to 3 outcomes. Emergent solutions, adaptive. It's adaptive either for environment or adaptive for social purposes. Or spontaneous, but okay. Or it follow very simple rules. Really very simple. What they call it, can't now pronounce it for whatever reasons. Spontaneous. And the third one, which is important, through collaborative approach, it has what I call it the self-organized mechanism. And that's what Jane Jacobs called it, follow what we call it organized complexity, navigated by refugees. Look at this. That's to me what is important. The simple rules it follows, it's really about emergent solutions, adaptive against environment, and also through collaboration, it leads to self-organization. This is some of the before sections and after sections now. Look how sophisticated it's become, the relationship, the integrations. And this is real photos, by the way. Really real photos. What I like about the configuration of this, my goodness, if you look at the city of Aleppo or Damascus, you will see the same language. You will really see the same language. What I like about this, the boundaries created by United Nations over time were reconfigured to achieve what I call it a balance between hidden and revealing, controlled by the refugees. They control what should be revealed and what should be hidden. All to do with their way of living, their privacy, and their culture. They control that space. And it's all to do with the transforming the rigidity of the military camp in order either to hide or to reveal. And it's all about being controlled by the refugees. Again, this picture is by the Italian artist. Look at this sophisticated alleyways. That's become semi-private, semi-public. That's a bit public. And see how each of those blocks has got its own sanitation and its own water system and own courtyard. And look at the small alleyways as well. And this is some of the internal of a kitchen, for example. You see some of this coloring and this style in some of the rural areas in Syria, by the way. This is an interesting story. Sorry, I know it is funny, but I have to say it. The pinky color, this is a salon for a woman called Ahmed. She is specialized on preparing, how do you want me to say, the brides. But because her caravan is not located in the high street, yeah, she couldn't afford to buy or to rent a caravan in the high street. To make herself distinct, her caravan distinct, she painted the main door in pinky color. So people can recognize the location of the caravan. That's called Salon Ahmed, where she prepared the brides. And interestingly, color coding become quite famous in the camp over time. As you can see, the red color. That's another interesting story. This is to one of the leader representative to those districts to give himself a status, because he is Mukhtar, to give himself a status, he built this incomplete arch, just as a way to give a status. And I really like the combination between different materials. Okay. Placemaking as a competition for resources. Wow. When refugees are arrived, when they arrived, they have kind of equality because all of them, regardless their status back in Syria, they were looking for one thing, safety. Okay? So they are equal in that sense. At that time, the emergency time. Yeah? However, over time, those who were rich back in Syria, they managed to bring their money to the camp and establish businesses. And those who couldn't afford it or don't have any money, they were relying on United Nations aid. Inequality start emerging because competition start emerging between those who can afford to rent or to establish business and those who couldn't. So placemaking become a competition for resources, as a competition where those with the power, when I say power here, resources, acquire more at the expense of those who do not. And this is, by the way, a very famous pictures of the Champs-Élysées. The last things you want to imagine, the logo of the Mac, or too many satellites in here, or the last things you will imagine that you can rent a wedding clothes, renting a wedding clothes. So that's the Champs-Élysées. You might tell me where the bikes come from. Amsterdam City Council donated most of those bikes to encourage cycling in the camp. So interestingly, that's what used to be the street in between, and this is what it is. And it really become over the time the main living room of the camp. And wow, look at the economic activities. The economic activities are located in Champs-Élysées. And interestingly, those who couldn't afford to rent or buy a caravan, they start establishing small businesses here and there inside the camp and throughout the camp. And as you can see, mini market, mini market, clothes, mobile phones, restaurants, fruits, animal and birds, currency exchange, shops, repair, maintenance, construction, household goods, electronics, food and drinks, and hair salon. So as you can see, it really become a proper city over the time. And that could be a shop, that could be a large shop, that could be a big shop with even a small shelter. So the refugees themselves start assembling and disassembling the caravans themselves. This is where now the private shops located within the main high street and throughout the camp. And it's become really, how do you want me to say, the spine, the real spine of the community. This is just some of the detailing of the shops and how it works. Again, that's a shop for renting wedding clothes. And this is maybe some of the shops, but not in the main high street, throughout the camps itself, because those people couldn't afford to buy it. Instead, they opened their own shops inside the camp. That's baklava now. This one started with 2 or 3 people. Now it become a proper business. And now, interestingly, they sell this baklava in Amman with a very special discounted price. So the camp and the products of the camp become a free zone for the Jordanian because it is good quality and it is cheaper as well. That's falafel and shawarma. This is rather upsetting to me. This is the hospital facade. And this is, you know, graffiti. Graffiti in language, when you draw a graffiti, this is an expression of anger sometimes, or you demand something. Yes, you lose trust, you lose faith. And what I like about this one, it has 2 messages. That the education, and don't forget education for children. And the other one as well, the importance of going back to the homeland and the beloved one, Syria. And you see the graffiti everywhere in the camp. And it's all the same message about education for the children and the young sisters and brothers. I would like to say something. When it's come to camp, absolutely we need the top down. Because the top down has got the power, has got the money, and has got the respond to the emergency to start with. As a beginning, the beginning. As Jane Jacobs said, we have to admit you're dealing with what we call it in English, the organized complexity. The organized complexity does require the top down to meet the bottom up. The bottom up follow spontaneous, simple rules, emergence and adaptive solution, and what I call it, the self-organization's elements came from collaboration. So the two has to meet, and we have to bring them together. That's really quite so important. So we need to move away from institutional boundaries, spatial boundaries, cultural boundaries, into how can we enable behaviors led by the refugees. More the spaces become communicative and more about cultural coming from the collective power. So 3 things I would like to say happened in Al-Za'atari. It starts with a rigid and equitable top-down emergency provisions imposed by UNHCR. But over time, it became more about collective refugees' responses to mitigate the challenges of the emergency camp through the co-production and more socially and cultural acceptance settings. And the third one, interestingly, over time, the competition for scarce economically resources as the camp economy grow and become its expression of culturally continuity became more complex. So we start moving from what I call it very static temporality into more semi-permanence And now it's keep and continuing unfolding. And that's the three messages I noticed with Al-Za'atari camp. Placemaking as a collective decision-making, placemaking as a construction of self-identity, and placemaking as a competition for resources. Thank you.